range पे sorting होगी. So although the JavaScript now provides class syntax as well, but still most of the people use the function for object-oriented programming. Reason being, the class is just syntactic sugarcoating, so they just like stick to the core. The problem with JavaScript is that if we have a function constructor and the function constructor has the function has some methods, right? So for example, in our student class, we have these two methods, एक log का हमारे पास method and we have this make element method. The problem with JavaScript is that if we have like 4 objects, each of these 4 objects would have separate memory for make element and log. This is not common in other languages. For example, in C++, if we have a class, we have attributes and we have methods, and we have hundreds of objects. Each object would only take the memory for the attributes, not the methods, right? Methods would be common. But in JavaScript, if we use functions for defining a class, then each object basically takes memory for the function separately. All of the objects would be consuming this memory separately, right? If you want to define a class using function syntax and then you want to put functions into it, the best way is to use prototype. So what is a prototype? Instead of making this function, this nested function, a part of this class or this object, what we do, we take it out, and outside the function we say that student.prototype. Now whatever we write in prototype is available to all the instances of the class, right? So if we say that .prototype .log is equal to this function, so what would happen? Functionally, we would not see any difference, right? So functionally, we would not see any difference, but practically, all the instances would share this common function, right? So the function would not take memory for each of the object. And we can do the same for make element. So we just write student.prototype.make element is equal to function, right? Now this function, these two functions would be shared by all the objects. So, ठीक है. अच्छा, इसके अंदर जो प्रोटोटाइप है, ये एक इंटरेस्टिंग चीज है, एंड दिस फीचर ऑफ जावास्क्रिप्ट माइट नॉट बी अवेलेबल इन other languages as far as I know. So for example, we have a string, let s is equal to abc abd, right? So we want to count the number of times a appears in this string, right? So as there is no count function, so we would get a type error, an exception for it. So we can extend the string class using string.prototype, right? And we want to add a function count to the string class, right? So this would change the behavior of the string class in JavaScript, but this change would not be permanent. The change would only would only remain to the current scope. So using string.prototype, we extend the string class. .count is equal to function. This function takes a character as parameter, and then we see that how many times this character appears in the string. We get the value of the string using this dot value of. So this dot value of returns the value of the current string, right? Dot match would basically use the match function. We pass the regular expression. In the regular expression, we pass the character. And then we pass the option of like global. That means we want to count as many times the character appears in the string. The match function would return an array, and we just like return the length of that array, right? So in this way, we implement the count function for the string array. Now this would work on the strings. Let's say if the string is abc abd. So if we say that s.count a, it would return true 2. If we pass it c, it would return 1, and if we pass x, it would return it would throw an exception. We get the exception because the match function would return null in this case, and null dot length would not exist, right? So in this case, we have to modify this function, and in a way that we said that this dot value of match. So we get this thing that match is equal to this thing, and then we say that return if match exists. So if it is if it exists, so we just return m dot length, and if it is null, that means it's a falsy, we return 0, right? So now if we count x, we get 0. So if you find want to count a character which does not exist in the string, we get 0. Now, if you want to use classes, the class syntax in JavaScript, it's quite easy. There was a time when classes were very frequent in React, but for some reason they are no more preferred in React, as far as I know. Rather, people use the functions for defining classes. So the syntax of the class is quite simple. So we define the class, like let's modify our own class, the student class. So instead, if we want to define the same class using class syntax, so what we would do, instead of function, now we would have class student, right? And it would not take any parameters, right? And instead of having function constructor like syntax, we have a reserved keyword constructor in classes, right? The constructor basically takes the parameters, right? And then we define the constructor. So here it is. So we just write the function name, right? So it would be log console.log and make element. So we don't need to write function, right? So we just like define the function. So that's it. So how is it different from like using the functions? We use class, then class name. Uh, constructor is declared using the keyword reserve keyword constructor. And then the functions are defined simply like this. So we don't need to define like this dot log is equal to function. We just like give the function name and define the function body. So this is how it works. So let's see. So it is working with the class syntax. So rest of the things remain the same. So if you look at the code is basically using the class syntax. Another thing, if we want to extend a class, we can use inheritance. Inheritance in JavaScript is done like this. So for example, if we have a class, for example, in this case, we have a class animated card, which extends the original class card. So we write the name of the new class extends and then the parent class, right? We would have the constructor. The constructor of the extended class might take an additional parameter. So in this case, it takes a parameter of effect. If you want to call the constructor of the parent class, you call it using the super function, right? So this is also a reserved word. So you call the super function, pass the parameters accepted by the parent class, and then store the extra parameter in the inherited class. So in this way, you can extend the classes as well.